Alright, now that we've got our three different keys modeled and animated, let's start working on our scene. So I'm going to close down that bottom viewport, and let's go ahead and Shift A, add a camera into our scene. Alright, so I'm going to hit O to go into my camera view and Shift Z so we can see. And in this right panel here, I'm going to find, where is it, lock camera to view right here. So this just allows you to move around wherever you move in the viewport, the camera's going to move with it. So I just want to get to where the viewport looks, really nice as a backdrop for these keys. So I'm going to face it kind of towards the sunset, maybe slightly pointed upwards. I'm also going to go ahead and in the camera settings change the focal length. Let's go to 50, see if we like that. Yeah, that'll be good for this project. Alright, so I'm going to put the camera about right here, and I'm going to uncheck that lock camera to view button. Go into my top view, hit Shift Z to go out of that right there. I'm actually going to hit G and move this camera back a bit. And I'm going to select all of these keys, G, move them over. So now really this is just making your composition and making your scene. You're going to want to just put keys in different directions, different places in space. Depending on your computer may can only handle about 6 of these in the scene. My final animation had, I don't know, but maybe 100 of these keys. So really it's just going to be a combination of what you want the look to be and what your computer can handle. So I'm just going to go into my top view and I'm going to hit B. I'm just going to start duplicating some of these. So I select everything, hit Shift D, and I'm just going to put these in a few different places. Oops, undo that one. Let's grab the middle key, Shift D. Just going to put it in a few different places. Grab this last key, Shift D. Alright, I'm going to jump in my camera view. Okay, so these keys are generally kind of in the right position. So I'm going to hit N to close that right panel and T to close the left panel so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. Give myself as much space as I can get. So I'm going to pull over another viewport. I like to sometimes have multiple different viewports of the different angles. So in this box, I'm going to go into the top view. In this one, I'm going to go in the side view. And I'm also going to right click on this camera and scale it up just so it's a little bit more obvious where it is. So at this point, it's just, this is playing with your composition. So I'm going to so now we have the controllers, these boxes are the controllers, so if you just right click on that, hit G, you can move this in space. So I'm going to put this kind of in the back corner of what the camera can see, move it down in this viewport, back over here, maybe hit R, Z, rotate it around that way. And so you're just going to go through and just build your scene like this. And if you're in the top view, you can just hit R. You don't have to hit RZ just because this is the rotation from this perspective. So you want to vary them. Do you want different heights in the front view, different position in the Z? In the top view, you want different in the X, Y. So really just play around with your composition and get something that looks good. So I'm just gonna do something kind of quick here, just so I don't spend all day doing this. You can be more specific with what you're doing, and so later we're going to have the camera follow our main focus key. So we're going to want some keys out of where the frame is. So for example, I'm going to pull this one down here because at some point the camera's going to point down and I want to have some keys there. And so for example, I'm going to put this one a little bit off to the side because the camera is going to look to the side at some point. So you just think about that when you're making your scene. Put that one there. And you want a range of some really close to the camera and some far away. we're going to add depth of field on this project, so it's nice to have some keys close by. Maybe that's too close in this case. That's blocking the other one, so here I'm actually going to bring it to over here, rotate it around here, and yeah, so just keep working with it. I'm gonna call it pretty soon here, just because you don't want to sit here watching me place keys around. But so I'm gonna jump into my camera view again and hit Shift Z. And like I said, the scene gets more interesting the more keys you have. But just for my demonstration purposes, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it like so. But I'm gonna actually, yeah, we're just gonna leave it like so for now. Hit Shift Z. I'm gonna hit Control S and save my project. Alright, and now we're going to have one key that flies through the rest of the scene. So actually I'm going to go back to the beginning here, just kind of scrub through if I can. Your computer maybe can't handle scrubbing through if there's too many keys in it, but so I'm just checking, everything's flying, okay, that's all good. So we're going to want one special key that's flying through the whole scene. So I've got an extra one right here. If you need another one, just duplicate some key that isn't really in your shot. And I'm going to hit Alt-G. That's just going to clear any of the location translations that's been done to it. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift-A. And I'm going to add in a curve to the scene. I'm going to scale this curve up. Okay. And I'm going to rotate it around. Move it like so. So this curve is going to control the animation path of the key. And so I'm actually going to go tab back and scale it back down. Put G, move it back here. And I'm going to tab back in edit mode. So one thing to keep in mind is if these influence handles are too small, your key might really rapidly change directions, and it just won't look good. So depending on the scale of your scene and where your points are and how close or far away they are from each other, just note that if you get some strange motion where your key is just really dramatically moving too quickly, it could be the size of these handles, and just keep that in mind. So even still in this, what I started doing here, that's pretty dramatic pretty quickly. So I'm going to pull that back in space here. And so if you want it to be interesting, you'll have it flying both left and right and up and down. So just go through your different view modes. I'm going to go to the right view just to double check what I'm doing here. Hit E to extrude out. And you can also right click on these handles and rotate them around. I don't think my handle is going to be this big, so I'm going to scale it down a bit. Right click on this handle, I'm going to scale that down a bit. G, move it down. Check my top view where we're at. Okay, I'm actually going to pull it over here, so it's going to fly a little to the left, a little to the right, and then back to the left. And then I'm going to extrude again and just kind of have it go right by the camera, and we'll pull it up in this view right here. I'm going to pull it up right there. So really you can make the path whatever you want. It can move around more or less, whatever is good. I'm going to tab back out, and I'm going to find that key. I believe it has that one right there. And I'm going to go into the object constraints, and I'm going to click on the follow path, and let's figure out which one this is. So we can see it's curve 12 here, so I'll go back there, find curve 12, and you'll see that it has jumped right to the end of that path. So I'm going to select the follow curve button, and you can see here, if I drag along this offset, we're going negative right now, but you'll see that the key isn't turned in the correct direction, so I'm going to select follow curve, and right now it's spun backwards, so I'm going to switch this to the negative Y, and you can now see that the key is facing the correct direction and it's moving along the path. So I'm going to take that back to 0 and I'm going to save my project. So you even can animate just using this offset. You could set a keyframe and frame 1 and a keyframe at frame. I'm actually going to change this project to be 240 frames long just to make it exactly 10 seconds long, but that's one way to do it. But we're going to do it using this animate path button right here. First I'm going to right click on the path that's creating the animation, and I'm going to go over to this curves menu here, and right in here in path animation it says 100 frames. I'm going to change that to 240, hit enter, and now if I right click back on this and go to the constraints and hit animate path, you'll now see that if you scrub to the animation, it is animated on that path for us for 240 frames. So I'm going to go to my camera view. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm just going to hit play on this and see how it looks. If you see in here, I'm only getting about 7 frames per second, so this isn't an accurate portrayal of how it's going to look. I'm just looking for any drastically huge errors, just kind of seeing that this is working at least mostly. Okay, so it's going through the scene. Okay, that's all nice and good. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and pause that, and then I'll take the moment to go to my scene tab and change the end frame to 240. So we want the camera to follow the path of the moving key. So I'm going to jump back to frame 1, and I'm going to deselect with A. I'll right click on the camera first, zoom in here, and then shift right click on the empty, hit the space bar, type in track, select make track, and track to constraint. So now if we scroll up through our timeline here, you'll see that the camera is following the path of the key. Alright, so now I'm going to add depth of field to this project. I'm going to zoom in here, right click on my key body. For me here, you can see right here it's cube 25. For you it's probably something different. I'll select my camera, go into the camera settings. In the focus of the depth of field, I'm going to go down to cube 25, switch this to f-stop, hit shift Z, okay. I'm going to bring it down to 0.5. Really, it's just up to you to play with this value. You can jump around different points in the animation and see what you like. You can go for something more dramatic, something less, whatever works for you. I'm going to hit shift Z and go out of there. Alright, so now I want to do a little test to see if the motion is alright here. I'm going to close these 2 viewports here. I'm going to go to my scene tab. And instead of doing a full render that would just take a lot of time, and really all we want to see is if the motion kind of makes sense, instead we're going to use this OpenGL animation. So 50% is cool here. I'm just going to change the output to go into this folder I'm working on. I'm going to name this speed test, whatever you want really. And I'm going to change it from PNG to H.264, change the encoding to MP4. This way it's just going to be a video and it'll be really simple to see how things are looking. So I've got that 50%, I've got where it's going, I've got these 2 settings. Alright, you're ready to just click on this OpenGL render, and the computer's just going to start rendering out the way you see it in the viewport. And like I said, this is just going to be a nice way to see if the motion makes sense without spending a whole lot of time rendering out this test. So I'll come back once this is finished. Alright, the video finished. I've got it pulled up here. I'm just going to hit play on it. And so we're just seeing how we think the speed looks. So mine could be a little bit slow, but I'm pretty happy. I think it makes sense with how the wings go. So really, this is just, seeing how the speed is, making sure there's no, maybe if your key, the handles are too small in the path, the head will whip around and you'll just see that, so you need to make some changes like that. But I'm happy enough with mine. If you have some issues, I'll go back into Blender. I'm going to hit escape on this. So some things to think about, if it's too fast or too slow, just alter the overall length of this, of your path that's controlling the animation. That's an option. It's also an option to change the amount of frames it's going over. So you've got some options like that, but like I said, I'm pretty much happy with it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and render mine out. So I'm going to go back to my scene tab. I'm going to bring this up to 100% here. I'm going to change this back to PNG, if I can find it, PNG. And the sampling, I found 300 worked pretty well for this project. And this all depends on the specs of your computer and whatever computer can handle. I'm going to change this folder to a new folder, and it's going to be rendered animation. Go into that folder, and I'm going to type in keys flying. And so instead of rendering it out as a movie like we did last time, we're going to do it as an image sequence. This is just a smarter way to do it, because if there's an error in the rendering, or if you can't render it all at once, you've got each frame is its own individual picture, and you can break it up, render it over a few days, or if it crashes for some reason, or your computer decides to update itself, you didn't lose all your work. So this is going to work for me. And really at this point, you just go up and you click the animation, and it's just going to start rendering it. So depending on the specs of your computer, and depending on how many keys you put into your scene, it may take forever to render it. It may not take that long. So really, you can even just do this as a single frame if you just want to do that. But there you go. At the end of this, you have your finished animation.